Some people are born to create records. I have a couple who have not one record, not two records, but God knows how many records. Bev and Lang, welcome to Calcutta.
Thank you very much.
Tell me, when this mad adventure thing get into you?
Oh, it's been there since I was a small boy. My father encouraged me to take up challenges, and as I got older, the challenges became more and more. And of course, there were many challenges in my youth that my parents would have been horrified about if they'd known about it. But I've always liked doing something different, pushing the envelope and solving problems, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
That's a lot of satisfaction. Creating records on both land, water, and air.
That's correct. We've
Space is yet. You haven't done space as yet.
No, I really don't have any interest in space. A machine of some sort. It'll be a car or an aeroplane or a boat or a tractor or something with an engine in it. And I've always been fascinated by being able to control machinery and make machinery do what I want it to do.
And you in control.
Exactly.
So you think he is going to ever at all consider going to space if he's not the pilot?
I don't think so, no. He's never shown any interest. As he said, he is earthbound. But he likes to have a machine.
Okay. Lang, what came first? The horse or the carriage?
That's a hard one.
I think I was driven by the experiences of my youth. I had a good circle of friends, particularly when I got into the teenage years, who did things with me, and we did some fairly outrageous things when we were young. We were travelling in the outback of Australia and going to places that most people in Australia had never been before, and we were doing this in our teenage years. I later joined the Army, and the Army gave me an opportunity to do so many things as well. I was a pilot in the Army, so I wasn't just stuck in one place. I got to see a lot of things. And of course the Army is a big green toy box. So we had access to vehicles and aeroplanes and all sorts of things. And but even outside the Army, during those years, I was always very, very interested in doing adventures and taking other people on adventures too. That was a lot of fun. But I always liked to lead it. I would never go on a tour. I'd never been on a bus tour. I would never go on a tour of a museum. If I'm doing it, I like to be running the show, and if people want to come with me, that's great, and if they don't want to come with me, well, that's fine as well.
You don't go to museums because you sit on a museum piece.
Yeah, the current trip we're doing, we're recreating the first drive from England to Australia. It was done by an Australian, Francis Birtles.
How did it all begin, this particular trip?
This particular trip is something that I've known about. Francis Birtles was an Australian explorer. Back in the early 1900s, he rode a bicycle all over Australia, across the deserts. In those days there were no roads. And then he got into motoring, and he broke many records, the first person to drive across Australia. And then he took it upon himself to be the first person ever to drive from England to Australia. And that was a huge adventure. And that was in a Bean 14 car, exactly the same as the car that we're driving. Our car is a sister car to his car. It's 100 years old, and it was sitting in a museum. I knew it was there, and then it became available when the owner died, and we managed to get it. And so here we are, we've 2/3 of our way through the trip. We've driven from England to Calcutta, and we're on our way to completing the journey across Australia.
How about the thrills and spills of this?
For me, it's all about meeting the people. I'm not quite into machinery like Lang is, but I just love the adventure of it. And meeting the people, going through so many different countries. This is our 14th country. And to travel through all these different countries and meeting people, we've just had the most incredible time. And in the whole trip, I have not seen an angry face. Everyone's been just so hospitable and generous, and it's just being taken into people's houses, learning about their cultures. That's the thrills for me on the trip.
Yeah. Lang driving around in this heat in a car that's open with a mechanical steering and a mechanical brake, and with Indian roads and Indian traffic weaving in and out. Share your experience.
We've driven in India quite a bit on several trips here, and I actually quite enjoy it because it's like driving in a video game in India. And so long as you keep moving, that's the rule. It doesn't matter how slow you're moving, but you must just keep moving. And the traffic just all seems to fit in. We've had many close shaves, of course, and with the old brakes on this car, they're pretty poor. So you've got to leave a bit of space, but if you leave too much space, of course there's another car that's going to go into that space in front of you. The temperatures have been quite horrendous. There's been a heat wave, as you're aware, while we're here. And in fact, in Balochistan in Pakistan, we got to 55 degrees, which is close to the world record temperature ever recorded. And even the modern cars were stopped on the side of the road. They couldn't go on, they were boiling. And the poor old bean was boiling, and of course us sitting in the bean, we were drinking a litre and a half of water an hour trying to keep ourselves cool. So it was fairly strenuous, those hot days that we had. Unfortunately, with an open car, there's nothing you do about it. You've just got to keep going. And we managed to keep the car going, and we got there.
The restoration process must have been quite tedious.
Well, we were very fortunate with this car because it was already restored when we bought it. It was in a museum. It was restored, maybe 30 years ago, or nearly 40 years ago, and used as a club car doing rallies in Australia. And then it went to a museum for many, many years. It was in a museum. So when we got it, obviously it hadn't run for many years. We had to go through and service it. But we found that the car was in quite good order. And so we did the minimum we had to do, and off we shipped the car to England from Australia.
And that was quite harrowing because you took, it had to go around Cape of Good Hope, and when I exchanged, WhatsApp messages, you said, it'll still take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Exactly. We got caught up with the troubles in the Red Sea, and the world shipping has been completely disrupted. So our ship, instead of going through the Red Sea to Europe, had to go with all the other ships around South Africa from Singapore, and that added 2 to 3 weeks, and of course all the shipping bookings at the berths. So every port in the world had ships waiting to go in. So that's why we lost so much time that pushed us into the hot period.
How was reception in Asia?
Yes, you cross the bridge at Istanbul and
Europe to
Asia. Yes, in Turkey was beautiful. The Black Sea coast of Turkey is just the most beautiful coastline. Mountains coming down to the sea, forests, wonderful old Roman and even Greek ports all the way along. Very, very historical. And then we crossed into Iran, up in the north of Iran, crossed from Turkey to Iran. And we were met there by the vintage car people. and they looked after us for 2,000 kilometres, all the way from the north to the south of Iran. And every day we had the club members were with us all the way through Iran, and we couldn't have asked for more wonderful people. They were so friendly. We had no problems. We had things going wrong with the car. Obviously, it's a 100-year-old car, so many little things broke and didn't work and needed adjusting. And mechanics, of course, in Asia are just wonderful. Western mechanics now have lost the ability to repair anything. They just take it out and put a new part in. But in Asia, the mechanics still have the ability to repair something, so they can take something that's broken and repair it.
So where was the first repair?
Oh, the first repair was in Turkey, and then a couple more in Turkey, then a few more in Iran, and then in Pakistan and in India. So all the time we've been in Asia, we've managed to find a local repairman, and he'll come out and with a minimum of tools and a lot of brains, they just come and fix things. And I've got a lot of respect for the Asian mechanics. They're just so good.
You know, in Myanmar, they have this ability to run World War II cars.
Yes.
And trucks. Yeah, I mean, incredible. Okay, tell me, now from India, where are you going?
From India, we'll probably go direct to Australia from Calcutta, because unfortunately the border to Burma, Myanmar has been sealed. The Indian government has sealed it, and there is no crossing that border. That was where the original route went, through Myanmar and down to Singapore. We did a trip here about 10 years ago, and Bev and I actually drove from Calcutta all the way up over the original route, right to the Burma border. So we have done that trip. So now we'll probably just go from Calcutta to Singapore, and then Singapore to Darwin, and recommence our trip 5,000 kilometres from Darwin all the way through to Melbourne, where the original trip 100 years ago finished.
Bev, I believe you had to fly back from the Wagah border.
I did.
Because they didn't allow the car.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
I had an e-visa, and when we got to the border and they looked at it, they said, this isn't for a land crossing, this is only for flying in. And they looked at my passport, and they could see that I'd been to India. I had stamps in it that I'd been there previously. And they tried very, very hard to overturn it, but no, it was resisted, and so I went to the border gate and they allowed me to go in the car, and then they said, no, you have to get out now, and you can wave to Lang as he goes through the border gate. And then I had to go with friends back to Lahore. And they organised a flight for me that same night. So at 3 o'clock in the morning I flew out of Lahore to Dubai.
All the way to Dubai?
Yes. And then I had to get a flight from Dubai to New Delhi. So it was only just so close to the border on each side. But no, there's no flights between India and Pakistan.
Okay, tell me about your air adventures.
Well, we've had many air adventures over the years. As I said, I was an Army pilot for 15 years in the Australian Army, and always interested in flying. And the first air adventure we had through India, we organised a vintage air rally from England to Australia.
American Peter McMillan and Australian Lang Kidby had the idea to build a replica Vickers Vimy and recreate that flight. Peter had been holidaying on Queensland Moreton Island when he met Lang.
But the lack of publicity that Ross has got, probably for the most important flight ever after the Wright brothers.
Peter was the man capable of raising those funds. Ross Smith had got his Vimy direct from the manufacturer. This aircraft was 6 tonnes, 13 metres long with a 20-metre wingspan. The twin-engine biplane was at the time a state-of-the-art heavy bomber. The replica would be built as close to the original as possible, from the hand-sewn cotton fabric on her wings to her steel bracing wire. Some changes were unavoidable. In place of the Rolls-Royce Eagle engines, which have not been made for 70 years, there would be 2 Chevrolet V8 racing car engines. Then, in November 1993, Lang packed up engines, gearboxes, propellers and fuselage from Australia and consolidated the whole project in San Francisco. Lang had found the disused Hamilton Air Force Base where he could oversee the operational side of the project. He brought all components and workers together, creating the biggest home-built aircraft ever. Gradually the Vimy took shape and the first flight was achieved on July 30, 1994 by Lang and Peter Hoare, an English pilot who had flown a Vimy replica that had been built in the 60s in the UK.
And we had 26 aeroplanes, all built before 1950, and we flew those aeroplanes all the way from England, all the way we stopped in Calcutta here, and that was in 1989, and we've done so many different flights since then. We've recreated the first flight from England to Australia. We built a replica of the aeroplane that first flew from England to Australia in 1919. And then after that, I flew a 1927 Avro-Avian, a small aeroplane, which replicated the first solo flight from England to Australia. And that was just me by myself and Bev going ahead by airlines, organising the clearances and the landing fees and all that sort of thing. And we just did that by ourselves, me flying this old aeroplane, and pretty much like we're doing now, except we're together now.
Are you aware that the world's second motoring event happened in Calcutta in 1904?
Yes, they've told us about this, and that was very interesting. But India's got such a long history of motoring, and the motor cars, it's always been a big market for motor cars. All the manufacturers have sold here at one stage, and it's got a very, very rich motoring history, India, yeah.
Tell me about the picking to Paris.
We got a group of friends together and we decided the first big transcontinental race was in 1907 between Peking to Paris, 14,000 kilometres, and there were 5 cars in that race in 1907. We managed to get all 5 original type of cars that were in that 1907 race. No modern cars, we just had these 100-year-old cars. And we shipped them to Beijing, and then we set off across Mongolia into Siberia and all the way across Russia, all the way across Europe, and finished in Paris. And we managed to get all 5 of those 100-year-old cars all that way, which was a miracle, really. We had a lot of breakdowns, but once again, in Mongolia and Russia, the mechanics there were wonderful. They could fix anything. Whereas once we got into Europe, if we'd had problems, they wouldn't have been able to fix them. But in Siberia, a little village in Siberia, they'll come out and they'll mend a broken spring or fix something on the car. So we had that wonderful old world mechanic experience once again on that trip.
The Austin 7 Madventure.
The most northerly tip of Australia is Cape York, and amazingly, in such a modern country as Australia, the whole tip, if you know the map of Australia, there's a pointy piece that goes to the top there. It's about 1,000 kilometres long, and that is still just open to four-wheel drives and off-road vehicles. And we took a 1928 Austin 7, the little tiny car, because in 1928 the very first car ever to drive to the tip of Cape York were two mad New Zealanders, and they almost carried this little car. There were no tracks, a few horse tracks. They floated it across rivers on a raft, and we thought we'd recreate that piece of history. So we got a 1928 Austin, and the poor little thing on all the rough roads, all the way it got there, and we got all the way back. So that was a lot of fun, but that was a tiny, tiny little motor car.
Yeah. So two mad New Zealanders did that.
Yes.
And later on, a mad couple did that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Nowadays, when you go on highways, you listen to the radio, you listen to all kinds of things. What keeps you entertained?
Yes, we were saying.
How do you fight boredom?
It's just that you're covering new country all the time, and I was never bored on this trip. We spent long hours just sitting there, and we go for hours without even talking to each other. But yes, I guess you meditate for some of the period, but it's just being able to see the sights, and some of the countryside, some of the landscape. I mean, it could be as barren as not one tree in sight, but it's still fascinating to witness all that. And it's all new, it's something different the whole time. So I couldn't say that I was bored at all.
In a modern motor car, we quite often use audiobooks.
Yes.
And audiobooks are a wonderful way to fill in the time. If you're in a modern motor car at 120 kilometres an hour for 1,000 kilometres, then it does become fairly boring. But the audiobooks make the miles fly by, and you can pick whatever you want. You get almost every book that's ever been written is now on an audiobook, and it's very, very entertaining. That's a good way of passing the time.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Do you read a lot?
Oh, a lot, yeah. I read two books a week, probably, something like that, yeah.
What are your other hobbies?
My main hobbies are I like working in my workshop. I've got a workshop there, and I work on cars, my old cars. We like travelling. We have a four-wheel drive motorhome, an off-road motorhome, and we use that a lot. We do a lot of travel in Australia and that, and we can go out into the desert in this four-wheel drive motorhome, and it's well set up. It'll go anywhere, it'll climb any sandhill. In Australia, of course, it's not like India. You can just find a river and you'll put your campsite up and camp beside the river 2 or 3 days, and you won't see one single person for 2 or 3 days. And you just got this whole river or a small little lake or something to yourself. And that's something that you can't get in India, because in India, no matter where you are, there'll be someone who'll come by or come and have a look or come to talk to you or see what you're doing. And that's one of the things I really like about Australia. You can get away from people and just have your own little world, yes.
What about music?
No, I like music, but I'm not musical. I like a wide range of music. I like classical music, I like pop music. I suppose, like most people, you prefer the music of your teenage 20s years. That's and you can tell someone's age almost. You ask them, what period of music do you like? And most people will say the music from their teenage, early 20s years. So for me, of course, it was the 60s, 70s. and but I like most music. It's interesting. Some traditional Indian music, I can't get a rhythm or because I haven't been educated in that area. But yeah, music's an essential part of life. I think everyone should have some music in their life. But unfortunately, I don't play any instruments at all.
So, Bev, the wives know the husbands better than anyone else. What's up his sleeves? Yeah.
He'll never give up. He'll never give up. Maybe we are slowing down physically a little, but he will go home and he'll be thinking of something different to do. So I can't say what it is, but I'm sure one day he'll just say, guess what, I've just seen such and such and we're going to do such and such. So
it's very difficult having a 20-year-old mind and an 80-year-old body.
No, seriously. I'm sure you have something up there somewhere.
Yeah, well, we have quite a few. We were talking earlier about driving through Africa. We've never driven. We've been to South Africa. We've been to Egypt. Bev's been a bit more. She's been to Central Africa, and but I've always wanted to do the Cape Town to Cairo trip, and that was one of the classic drives in the world. And I don't know whether I'll ever do it, but it would certainly be in a modern car. It wouldn't be an old car now. 20 years ago I said we'll do it in a vintage car or a classic motor car, but I'll do it in a brand new Land Cruiser this time.
Age is nothing but a number.
Correct.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bev. Thank you, Lang. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us. Yeah.